I never expected the day she would come back. 3 years, just like that, she vanished from my life like a ghost slipping through walls, leaving only silence and 1,000 unanswered questions. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder, but for me, it only made the wound fester. I spent every night replaying her last words, the way she looked when she said she had to leave for a business trip. I believed her. I had to. Love makes you desperate for hope, even when reason screams otherwise. But now here she is again, standing in my doorway like some haunting memory I never wanted to relive. Only this time, she's not alone. Clutched tightly in her arms is a baby with eyes so eerily familiar it stopped my breath. Someone else's child, she said softly. A secret I never saw coming, wrapped in flesh and silence. The house feels smaller somehow, like the walls are closing in, suffocating me with what I don't know. I want to scream, to ask why she left, why she stayed away, and why she brought this child back into my life as if nothing had changed. But all I can do is stand there, frozen, caught between a past I thought was buried and a future I never imagined. This isn't just a story about a woman who left. It's about the truth she's hiding, the lies I didn't know I was living, and the shattered pieces of a life that may never be whole again. And I'm the one left trying to pick up the pieces before they slip through my fingers forever. Her name is Elena. I met her 7 years ago, back when the world felt simpler, and love was something I thought would never betray me. Elena was everything I wasn't. Bold, ambitious, magnetic. She had this way of lighting up a room just by walking in, like she carried her own personal sun with her. I was drawn to her from the moment we met, and maybe she saw something in me too. Something steady, something safe. We fit together like mismatched puzzle pieces that somehow made sense. When we started dating, it felt like the beginning of forever. I wasn't naive. I knew she was restless, always chasing something bigger, a career that demanded sacrifices I didn't quite understand. She was a rising star in the corporate world, always traveling, always moving. But no matter how far she went, she promised me she'd come back. She swore our life was something worth holding on to. I was a different kind of person, rooted, patient, working a steady job at a publishing house. I loved the quiet life we had in our small apartment, the weekend dinners, the late-night talks. I thought love could bridge the gap between her restless spirit and my grounded world. Then there's me. I'm Daniel, the guy who waited while Elena chased her dreams, the man who kept the lights on, the fridge full, and the home warm. I thought I was enough for her. I believed in us with all my heart. But beneath Elena's confident exterior, I never fully saw the cracks. There were late-night calls she'd brush off, sudden trips she'd hide details about. I told myself it was just the price of ambition, the cost of loving someone who refused to be tied down. And maybe I was fooling myself. Then there's the child. Her name is Maya, or so I was told. A fragile little thing with Elena's dark eyes and a stubbornness I recognize. The baby came as a shock, a living secret Elena carried with her, like a weight too heavy to share. I don't know whose child Maya really is. Elena won't say, and that silence haunts me more than any lie. I remember when we were happy, the easy laughter, the dreams we whispered in the dark. But now all of that feels like a different lifetime. Elena left for what she said was a business trip, but that trip turned into years of absence, and now she's back with a child I don't recognize, and a story I'm desperate to hear. So here we are, three people tangled in a story I'm only just beginning to understand. Elena, the woman I loved and lost, Maya, the innocent link to a secret I didn't know existed, and me, the man left to figure out what all of this means before it's too late. The moment Elena stepped through the door, the air in the room shifted, thick with tension, charged with unspoken truths. She looked tired, but there was a calm in her eyes that unsettled me more than any anger or sadness ever could. And then I saw her, Maya, cradled gently in her arms, a tiny life I'd never imagined would become part of our story. I wanted to ask everything all at once. Where have you been? Why didn't you call? Whose child is this? But my voice caught in my throat. Instead, I just stood there, watching her carefully set the baby down on the couch, her hands trembling slightly. Elena, I finally managed, why now? After all this time, why come back with her? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked away, swallowed hard, like she was fighting a war inside herself. Then softly she said, Daniel, I know this is a lot to take in. I didn't plan for any of this, but I had to come back. For her and for us. For us? I echoed, disbelief sharpening my words. After 3 years of silence, you think for us still means anything? She nodded, tears threatening to spill. I never stopped thinking about you, about us. But things happened, things I couldn't explain over the phone or in a quick message. I wanted to believe her, I really did. But the questions swirled inside me, louder than ever. Who is Maya's father? Why didn't Elena tell me? Was she running from something or someone? Then came the hardest part. Elena pulled out a small envelope from her bag and handed it to me. There's something you need to see, she said. I unfolded the papers inside, medical records, paternity test results, and a letter from a man I'd never heard of. The truth hit me like a freight train. Elena hadn't just left for a business trip. She'd left to protect us, from a past I never knew she had, and from a man whose shadow still loomed over her life, and now over mine. Everything I thought I knew was unraveling, and just like that, my quiet life was thrown into chaos. The past wasn't done with us yet. The days after Elena's return felt like a waking nightmare, like I was caught in some strange, twisted loop where nothing was what it seemed. I watched her carefully, trying to read the cracks in her expressions, the half-truths she didn't say. But Elena had always been good at hiding her pain, and now, with Maya in her arms, she was a fortress I couldn't breach. She stayed in the apartment, but it was as if a wall had been built between us. The easy warmth that once existed was replaced by cold silences and half-finished conversations. I could see the exhaustion in her eyes, but underneath that, there was something else, a fierce determination, like she was running from a storm I couldn't see. Maya, though, was the unexpected center of everything. The baby's presence was both a balm and a constant reminder of the distance between us. I found myself watching her when Elena wasn't looking, her tiny fingers curling around Elena's hair, the way she looked up at her mother with unquestioning trust. And it hit me. Whatever Elena had been through, Maya was innocent in all this, caught in the middle of a story too big for her small world. I tried to reach Elena, to talk to her like we used to, but every attempt felt like pushing against a stone wall. She was guarded, her answers clipped, her eyes darting away whenever I asked about the man in the letter. Who was he? What had he done to make Elena run? One evening after putting Maya to sleep, I finally confronted her. Elena, I can't keep pretending I don't see it. You're scared. You're hiding something. I need to know. She looked at me for a long moment, then sighed, the weight of years pressing down on her shoulders. His name is Victor. He was part of my past. Something I never told you because I wanted to protect you. But he found me. And when I got pregnant, I knew staying meant danger. Not just for me, but for Maya and for you. I felt the ground shift beneath me. Victor, a name I'd never heard, but one that suddenly filled every corner of our fractured story. Elena was running from a past I had no place in, and yet here I was, pulled right into the eye of the storm. Days turned into nights filled with whispered phone calls, hurried packing, and visits from strangers whose faces I couldn't place. Elena was frantic, always looking over her shoulder, and I was helpless, watching her slip further away even as she tried to hold on. I wanted to believe her story, the danger, the fear, but doubts gnawed at me. Why hadn't she told me sooner? Why hadn't she called? Was this all true or just another lie wrapped in desperation? Despite everything, I found myself drawn back into the old rhythm, feeding Maya, changing diapers, rocking her to sleep. She needed me, and for the first time since Elena left, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe we could rebuild something. But rebuilding meant confronting the past, and that meant facing Victor. One afternoon, I found a letter Elena had hidden in the drawer. It was from Victor, thinly veiled threats disguised as apologies, promises that she couldn't run forever. Reading those words, I realized that this wasn't just about a business trip gone wrong. This was a battle for survival, and I was standing right in the middle of it. Elena caught me with the letter in my hands. "You shouldn't read that," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "He wants to scare us, to control us." I nodded, but I wasn't sure anymore who was trying to control whom. Elena's fear was real, but so was the growing distance between us. The woman I loved was slipping through my fingers again, this time with a child I barely knew, and a secret that could destroy us all. And yet, every time Maya smiled, I was reminded that the past might be dark, but the future, our future, was still unwritten. I promised myself I'd fight for that future, for Elena, for Maya, for whatever fragile hope remained between us. But the question that haunted me day and night was simple and terrifying. Could love really survive a betrayal this deep? It was a rainy evening when everything changed. I was going through some of Elena's things, trying to piece together the fragments of her life I'd never known. I wasn't looking for answers. I was just desperate for anything that might explain the woman who left and the woman who returned with a child I couldn't place. That's when I found it, a hidden folder tucked beneath a stack of papers, thick with documents I never expected. Birth certificates, legal papers, and something that made my heart stop. A letter from a lawyer. It wasn't addressed to me or Elena, but to someone named Victor. The letter explained everything in chilling detail. Victor wasn't just a figure from Elena's past. He was Maya's biological father, a man with a violent history, someone who had threatened Elena's life. The letter detailed a court order granting Elena full custody and restraining Victor from contacting them. But there was a catch. Victor was appealing the decision, and his influence was dangerous, far-reaching. I sat back, stunned. All this time I'd believed Elena was running from an abstract threat, a shadow looming over her career and our family. But now I saw the real picture. Elena was a survivor, fighting not only for her life, but for Maya's future. She hadn't left to abandon me, she had left to protect us. This revelation shifted everything I thought I knew. My anger, my confusion, they were replaced by a fierce need to protect her and the child she brought back. But there was still one question burning in my mind. Could I trust Elena completely, or was there more she was still hiding? One thing was clear. The battle ahead wasn't just legal or physical. It was a test of trust, love, and the limits of what I was willing to forgive and fight for. After that night with the lawyer's letter, everything shifted. The fragile thread of hope I clung to was stretched taut by fear, uncertainty, and a growing storm that threatened to tear us apart. Elena and I were no longer just two people trying to reconnect. We were soldiers in a war neither of us had signed up for, a war for survival, for Maya's future, for the truth we both needed but feared. Elena's return brought a whirlwind I could barely keep up with. Days bled into nights filled with whispered conversations, hurried trips to lawyers, and endless phone calls from unknown numbers. Victor's shadow was everywhere. He wasn't just a man with a temper. He was a predator, weaving his way through the cracks of our lives like a venomous snake. At first, I wanted to protect Elena by pushing Victor away, pretending I could shield her with my presence alone. But the reality was brutal. Elena's fears were real, and Victor's influence ran deeper than I realized. Friends who once smiled warmly at her now glanced nervously. Business contacts whispered behind closed doors. The threat was no longer just physical, it was social, emotional, and psychological. Elena became a different person. The confident woman I'd loved was replaced by someone haunted, cautious, often distant. She glanced at the door as if expecting it to burst open any second, her hands trembling when Maya cried at night. I tried to be her anchor, but sometimes I felt like I was drowning with her. And then there was Maya, the little girl with her mother's dark eyes but a spirit all her own. She was the light in the chaos, the reason Elena kept fighting. Watching Elena soothe her, whispering lullabies and promises of safety, I saw a strength I hadn't known was there. But Maya's presence also complicated everything. She was a living reminder of the past Elena was trying to bury, and of the future none of us could predict. One afternoon as I fed Maya, Elena sat across from me, her eyes distant. "Daniel," she said quietly, "I need you to understand something. Victor isn't just a threat to me, he's a threat to Maya, to our lives. If he wins custody or even gets close, Everything we fought for will be gone. Her words hit me like a punch. I'd thought this was about protecting Elena, but now I realized the stakes were higher than I'd imagined. This was about family, our family, and the lengths we'd have to go to keep it intact. Days later, Elena received a disturbing message. It was anonymous, a photo of Maya at the playground, taken without our knowledge. The message was clear. I'm watching. Fear took root in our home. Elena installed security cameras, changed routines, even considered moving away. But the psychological toll was immense. Elena's sleep became erratic, her smiles forced. I watched helplessly as the woman who once lit up my life faded under the weight of constant threat. I tried to be her strength, but sometimes my own fear gnawed at me. I wrestled with anger. At Victor, at Elena for keeping secrets, at myself for not seeing the danger sooner. But beneath it all was a raw, desperate need to protect the fragile family we had left. One night after putting Maya to bed, Elena broke down. "I'm scared, Daniel," she whispered. "Scared that I'm not strong enough, that I'll lose her, that I lost you." I pulled her into my arms, the weight of her confession settling between us. "You're not alone," I promised. "We'll fight this, together." But even as I said those words, I knew the path ahead was uncertain. Trust had been fractured. The past loomed like a dark cloud, and the future was a battlefield. The following weeks blurred into a tense dance of court dates, private investigations, and desperate attempts to reclaim normalcy. We learned more about Victor's manipulations, how he used his power to intimidate witnesses, bend the system, and keep Elena trapped in fear. Elena confided in me one evening, her voice low and raw. "He's more dangerous than you think, and he's not just fighting for custody. He wants control. Control over me, over Maya, over everything." Her vulnerability struck a chord deep inside me. I saw the woman who'd sacrificed everything to protect her child, the woman fighting battles no one else knew about. And I realized my role wasn't just to be her partner, but to be her shield. Our relationship was evolving in ways I never expected. The cracks from the past still showed, but beneath the fear and anger, there was a growing bond forged in fire. Elena began to trust me again, sharing pieces of her past and hopes for the future. And I, in turn, opened up about my own fears. The guilt for not being there. The struggle to balance protection with respect for her independence. One evening, after a particularly grueling court hearing, Elena turned to me, exhaustion lining her face. "Daniel, I don't know if we'll ever be normal again, but maybe that's okay. Maybe what matters is that we face this together." I nodded, heart pounding. "Whatever happens, I'm here. For you. For Maya." As we held each other in that quiet moment, I knew the fight was far from over. But for the first time in a long time, I believed we might survive it. Yet beneath the fragile peace, I sensed the final battle was looming, a confrontation that would test everything we'd built and force us to confront the darkest secrets of all. The night Victor finally came for us was one I'll never forget, not because of how it ended, but because of everything it brought to the surface. The fear, the anger, the raw pain that had been simmering beneath the surface for months exploded into a storm so fierce it nearly tore us apart. It started with a loud, aggressive pounding at the door. Elena was asleep beside me, Maya cradled in her arms, her breath shallow but steady. I jumped up, heart hammering, the memories of every threat, every warning flashing in my mind. I didn't hesitate. I moved to the door, locking eyes with Elena, who nodded silently. A wordless pact to face this nightmare together. "Who is it?" I called through the peephole. No answer, just more pounding. I grabbed my phone, ready to call the police, but the door shook violently, as if someone was trying to force it open. Panic surged through me. This wasn't just a threat anymore. It was a direct attack. "Daniel, behind you!" Elena screamed. I spun around just in time to see Victor crashing through the window. His face was a mask of fury, wild eyes blazing with a hatred that chilled me to the bone. The man I'd only seen in threatening letters and shadowed memories was now standing in my living room, real and terrifying. "Elena," he spat, voice low and venomous, "you think you can run from me? From our child?" Elena stepped in front of Maya, shielding her like a mother lion. "Maya is not your child," she said firmly, voice shaking but resolute. She is mine, and you will never take her. Victor's gaze flicked to me, then back to Elena. And who the hell are you? He sneered. A useless obstacle. I felt my blood boil. I'm the man she loves, the father of this family. His laugh was cruel, mocking. Family? There is no family. You're just a fool caught in her lies. The room tightened with tension, every second stretching like an eternity. I wanted to lash out, to protect Elena and Maya from the monster in front of me. But Elena held me back with a look, one that told me to stay calm, stay smart. Victor, she said quietly, steadying her voice, you lost your right to be part of this family the day you tried to hurt us. The court has made it clear. If you don't leave now, I will call the police. His expression twisted with rage, but something else flickered. Fear? Resentment? I wasn't sure. He glanced around the room, eyes narrowing on the baby sleeping peacefully in her crib. Then in a sudden movement, he lunged toward Maya. Time slowed. I threw myself between them, grabbing Victor's arm, wrestling him away. Elena screamed, grabbing a heavy lamp and smashing it against his head. He stumbled, dazed but not defeated. The struggle was chaotic, a blur of punches, shouts, and shattered glass. In that moment, I saw the raw desperation in Elena's eyes, the fierce love that had kept her alive all these years. Finally, the sound of sirens pierced the night. Victor froze, his wild gaze meeting mine one last time before he fled out the broken window, disappearing into the darkness. The police arrived moments later, finding us shaken but safe. Elena clutched Maya tightly, tears streaming down her face. I sat on the floor, chest heaving, the adrenaline slowly ebbing away. As the officers took our statements, Elena looked at me, her voice barely a whisper. Thank you for everything. I reached for her hand, feeling the fragile bond between us strengthen in the aftermath of terror. But even as relief washed over us, I knew the fight wasn't over. Victor was out there, and this confrontation was only the beginning of a new chapter, a battle for peace, for family, for survival. That night marked a turning point. The fear was still there, but so was a fierce determination, not just to protect Maya, but to reclaim the life Elena and I deserved. As we sat together, exhausted and raw, I realized something profound. Love wasn't just about safety or happiness. Sometimes it was about standing in the storm, holding on tight, and refusing to let go, even when everything else was falling apart. And that was exactly what we would do. In the days and weeks after that terrifying night, everything felt surreal, like we were walking through the aftermath of a storm, the sky slowly clearing, but the air still heavy with tension. Victor's sudden attack had shaken us to the core, but it also forced a reckoning, a moment where Elena and I had no choice but to confront everything we'd been avoiding. The police increased patrols around our neighborhood, and the court swiftly issued a stricter restraining order against Victor, recognizing the danger he posed. Legal battles ensued, but this time Elena and I were a united front. No more secrets, no more running. We faced the fight head-on, not as isolated individuals, but as a family bound by something far stronger than fear: love. Elena's strength amazed me every day. After years of hiding, protecting, and surviving alone, she allowed herself to lean on me. I learned more about her past, about the pain and sacrifice behind her silence. The nights when she stayed awake, cradling Maya, reliving memories that made her flinch. The moments when she hesitated to trust, afraid that any mistake would cost us everything. But she also found joy again, in Maya's laughter, in small moments of peace, in the fragile hope that one day we might truly be safe. For my part, I learned the limits of my own courage and the depth of my love. I realized that protecting someone isn't just about fighting external threats. It's about understanding their pain, respecting their fears, and standing beside them even when the road gets dark and uncertain. I learned to listen, to be patient, and to accept that healing isn't linear. Maya blossomed in the midst of it all, a bright, curious child whose presence reminded us what was truly at stake. Watching Elena as a mother made me see her in a new light. Her fierce love, her resilience, her willingness to fight not just for herself, but for the little girl who had become our shared future. There were still scars. There always would be. The betrayal of the past lingered, the questions about trust, the wounds that hadn't fully healed. But those scars became part of our story, a reminder of how far we'd come and how much we'd survived. Reflecting on everything, I understood that love is messy and complicated. It's not just about passion or happiness. It's about commitment, forgiveness, and sometimes sacrifice. Elena and I had been tested by fire, and while we weren't perfect, our bond had been reforged stronger. The conflict with Victor never fully disappeared. Legal battles and security concerns remained, but they no longer controlled us. We reclaimed our home, our lives, and most importantly, each other. Looking back, I see that Elena's departure wasn't abandonment. It was survival. Her return with Maya wasn't a betrayal. It was a courageous act of hope. And the journey we took together, through fear and pain, taught me more about love than any moment of calm ever could. I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing. Whatever storms come our way, we face them as a family, with honesty, with courage, and with a love fierce enough to weather even the darkest nights. And that is the story I will carry with me, for Elena, for Maya, and for the second chance we fought so hard to earn. I still remember the day Elena left for that business trip, the weight of unanswered questions pressing down on me, the silence between us growing heavier with every passing hour. Back then, I didn't realize how much that departure would change everything. I didn't know that 3 years later she would return not just with herself, but with a child who wasn't mine, a child who would forever alter the course of our lives. Now, as I sit here watching Elena and Maya sleep peacefully, I understand that life isn't about neat endings or simple explanations. It's messy, unpredictable, and often painfully complicated. But it's also about resilience, the ability to rebuild after devastation, to find light in the darkest places, and to hold on to hope even when everything feels lost. Our story is far from perfect. There were betrayals, fears, and moments when giving up seemed easier than fighting. But love, as I've come to learn, isn't about perfection. It's about the willingness to face the chaos, to accept the scars, and to keep moving forward together. Elena's return wasn't a closure, it was a beginning, a new chapter that demanded courage and forgiveness. And Maya, innocent and bright, became the living symbol of that second chance. Together we forged a fragile but unbreakable family, shaped by pain but strengthened by love. If there's one thing I've learned through all this, it's that the past doesn't define us. Our choices do. We choose who we become, who we fight for, and how fiercely we love. And so here we are, still standing, still fighting, still hoping, together. For support, do like, comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.